And this is Tony Diaz, and he's going to talk about the rescue of the Prince of Persia source code that took place just a month or two ago. Thanks, Tony.
All right. Change of layout here. So, I can't even show you the chat. Anyway. So one afternoon we're monkeying around in IRC as usual, and someone from Pennsylvania, a couple guys from Pennsylvania that hang out are involved in, you might have heard Jason Scott talk earlier about the disk ferret and associated hardware. There's a cryoflux and disk ferret, that's it, yeah. It's all new to me in terms of I'm familiar with it, but I haven't gotten into it myself because I've been wanting to do it the old-fashioned way. I make the disk read, but I can certainly understand and appreciate the cool factor in going after the stuff raw. In terms of we're used to raw, you think of a digital camera and you take the JPEG picture and you take a raw picture, and the raw picture is usually 5, 6, 10 times bigger because it's all the raw data from the imager in the camera just thrown on the card. It's just here, let your cool image processing software sort this out instead of our built-in little algorithm in the camera. You might get a better picture, you might get a worse picture, you might get the same one. But if you get the same one, it means it worked, right? So the cryoflux card is actually very similar. Cryoflux and disk ferret are doing something very similar. A diskette is nothing but magnetic media. And if you think back to the old days of reel-to-reel recorders and 8-track and cassettes and whatnot, it's all magnetic media. Drags it past the head, and you hear what comes off of it. So if you took a disc, and I have to admit, in the high school era, we took discs and cut them up into strips and put them together on a splicer and put it on a reel-to-reel machine, see what it would sound like. Of course, discs were straight, and the strips were straight, and the discs were written in circular, but what the heck, it was fun anyway. And it sounded just like a bunch of garbage, kind of very much like you hear in a modem when you pick a modem up. It sounded like a bunch of garbage if you got it at the right speed. Whatever that speed was, we never figured out because we did about this much before we got bored with it and went back and forth with it. But yeah, we wanted to see. So, you know, fast forward all these years, and we finally have the bandwidth capability and the storage and the processing power to deal with all this. And they figured that we'll just modify a disk drive to let me just control it, and I'm going to step it at the rate I want. Then I'm going to take what I hear off the head. Of course, I'm going to go back digital with it because we're going to put it back on a hard drive. But like I said, now you're getting raw data. So at its most fine point, the 143K floppy that we're used to was coming in at about 300 meg. Actually, no, I take that back. 600 meg. Yeah, one CD-ROM per 143K floppy. So, with these guys in Pennsylvania, with the cryoflux card at the same time, or the disk ferret, excuse me, we were actually saying, you know, Jason and I were discussing this, going, well, we're not going to tell them what we're giving them. We're just going to give them these dumps. Because if we tell them, then they know what to tell us back. This is, now, if they can tell us stuff that we know that they don't, that we didn't tell them, then we know that their hardware is doing the job, and these guys know what they're doing. And this was actually a proving point for a lot of this. You know, this ferret wasn't really, none of this stuff was actually this high profile. So here we are. We take a couple dumps of disks, send it to them. They're telling us, for one, we don't need to give you that high a detail. We can turn it down a bit because the quality of the dumps are actually very good. So we don't need that much data. So we got it down to 150 meg. So it was a little quicker to give them more. They're telling us what, you know, if you, for those in the medical field are familiar with it, you get an EKG and they tell you, oh, you've had a heart attack 4 heart attacks ago. Heart attacks apparently leave marks on your EKG just like tree rings, and they can say, this was a drought year, this was a good year. They know. Well, these guys are telling us this disk has been formatted 14 times. And on the 3rd time they wrote this to it, because here's remnants of it hanging off the side, it's like your car goes down the dirt road and you flick some junk to the shoulder. There's bits of noise hanging off. They could tell what was going on. They knew the disc was written spiral track the first time. I'm like, okay, the hardware works. They know what they're doing. So that's one way of doing it. So you get a disc that you have no way of reading the data with now, but you want to make an image of it. But you can absolutely be sure you can put it back on something should you find the original hardware. Stick it back in there and let it go. So anyway, back, that was there's a little tangent on the side there. One afternoon in IRC, we get this semi-cryptic message of the way I saw it, because I was half asleep and I looked at it. Prince of Persia source was found. And funny, didn't really know it was lost. I mean, I read about the remake and he was asking for it, but I didn't really think about it. And then says, yeah, they found it. It was found in the closet. Discs are being mailed to California. Neat, cool. And they're having a bit of discussion back and forth about, well, how are we going to, get it off of there and whatnot. And another little offshoot for you. If you ever find an old disc, wow, look, let's see what's on this. Always put the old disc in the drive with the first intent being to make a copy of it. Because it could be the last time it reads. And that being if the disc is so bad that it is shredding and losing material off, losing particles, that it will be the last time you will read that disc. The head will go over it one more time and then it starts to drop pieces all over the place. And of course you're on a messy disk drive. If you've ever found old VHS tapes and you look in the window and it's got little brown flecks, don't even put it in the machine. You might as well have the kid on TV with the Allstate commercial where he shoves oatmeal in the VCR. Forget it. Don't even do it. It's going to leave. VCR heads have all kinds of grooves and crannies in them. Forget it. It's done. So diskettes, at least you can open the drive, blow it out, clean it, and start over. But always put the disk in the drive with the intention of reading it, to copy it. Even if it's to RAM. Locksmith 6.0 fast copy with 5 1/4 inch discs, anything that's 16 sector standard format, ProDOS or DOS 2.3. If you have more than 128K in the computer, 192 actually will do it. It will read the entire disk into memory. The little prompt at the bottom, you've got a few commands, 0, 1, and 2. You type in 0, 1, or 1, 0, it reads drive 1 to drive 0, which is RAM. Then you can go 0, 1, and keep putting disks in and make copies. So always read your disk into memory. Use a one-pass copier. Get it, write it back, then go exploring. So anyway.
Is Locksmith the one you recommend?
That's
over Copy 2 Plus?
Once Copy 2 Plus is a glorified FID. It doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah. I use Locksmith and Pirate's Friend was another one, which is basically a kind of a 19-second disk copier. There's also Disk Muncher. All of these actually go and try reading disks thoroughly. Disk Muncher works same way as Locksmith. You've got more RAM, but Locksmith uses auxiliary RAM and Slinky RAM. Disk Muncher will only use Slinky RAM, slot 0 or 7 RAM. So anyway, back to that, reading the disks, reading it with a purpose. Now with Locksmith, it shows you a lot of numbers on the screen. And let's see here, actually, my cheesy method of tech support is to grab screenshots when I'm on the phone with somebody, because I think there's a screenshot of Locksmith fast copy. Yeah, you always want to pick fast copy, and then there was another. Anyway, Locksmith paints numbers on the screen, one for each sector. 0, 1, 2. If it puts a period, it read it. Puts a semicolon, it read it with issues, but it didn't. But it read it. Thinks it read it anyway. It's pretty sure it read it, because it'll read it 2 or 3 times. Then it'll start counting. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If it gets to 9, A, B, C, puts a D on the screen, it's done. It didn't read it. It's inverse. If there's ever any inverse blocks on the screen that did not read that tracking sector. So if you get a whole screen of semicolons into memory, you read the disk. You might want to hit return. It'll read the disk once. Again, always read it once, write it back to another disk, then put it back in and do it again. The second time, you may get better results. It's happened. Second or third time. You can try a couple more times after that. Read what you got once, put it on the disk. 3.5-inch discs are similar. I hear from the other end, I hear a lot of people say they have worse luck with 3.5-inch discs, better luck with 5.25. I find it the other way around. 3.5-inch discs, to me, they got the shutter on them. I will say formatting new discs or reformatting old discs has always been a fun pain. For some reason, there's a problem. But copying discs and using discs that have stuff already on them and getting it back off has been a lot less of a pain than 5.25. But using discs over again, yeah, you're better off going to find new ones. For whatever reason, 3.5s are picky. They're much more, the data's packed a little more dense. But anyway, copy the disk, then do it again. If you have a whole screen full of semicolons and even 1s and 2s and 3s and whatever, as long as nothing's inversed, you've managed to get a proper read off of that disk. Write that back to a new disk, then go play with it, put the other one back in the box. If you have any doubts, you can put the other one in a cryoflux machine and it can go and do their job. So, with that, that was one of the angles of attack that, at least with the unprotected stuff we took, was to read the disks with the purpose of writing them. So it's funny that this is Jason Scott's pictures because my stuff I can't show on here, but this will work as well. It's kind of funny. He's got this. I did the same thing right when I got to the other side of LA. I started taking pictures out the window of the car. I haven't seen this in a while, so I was kind of amused there. So when we got there earlier in the morning, see the room kind of still a little empty. We had a writer from, who else was, who was there? I think Gizmodo and Wired Magazine sent a writer. They were going to send a TV crew to watch some of it, but they ended up not coming. So I ended up setting up a table full of stuff, and Jason's on the other side of the room with a disk ferret and a couple machines going, and see here is, I even brought the same 2E full of stuff. That's for tomorrow's session as well, but I figured what the heck. So you can see Locksmith on the screen there. Actually, there may be another picture of it here. I've got this was actually kind of cool because I hadn't packed up all this stuff to go to an Apple II event other than KansasFest like this, where you grab all these copiers and disk drives and stuff. And since the early days of 1990s, where I'd go to copy parties in the Hawthorne Mall, and those were actually kind of fun because one of the little side thing, one of the tables they would set up would put a bunch of Commodore 1541 drives. It was a cool program for those. Put them on a Commodore, load the program, walk away, take the computer away. You leave 2 drives on the table. The top one was always you put your original in, the bottom one you put a blank in. As soon as 2 disks were in there and the doors were shut, tick, 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 tick. And it knew when the disks passed the write protector, you swapped them. So you found the disk of somebody's table you wanted, you took it and your blanks over to that table and you made copies. And there was another one set up that if more than one person wanted a copy, you had 5 disk drives chained, and it would make 5 copies. All ahead of their time, anyway. That's where the modern day demo party seemed to have came from the copy party back then. But anyway, so that's the first time in a long time I'd set up all this stuff and did this, and that was kind of cool. And so here's basically tons of utilities from the old days, blank disks, Notcher, and 2GS for the 3.5s. We're all set to go to town. What do I got running here? AppleWorks. I think maybe we must have found AppleWorks. Where's Randy? And the ubiquitous shoebox of disks right there. So while I was working on the stuff that was basically presumed unprotected, basically stuff that we can get to, or as Jason liked to call it, the low-hanging fruit. He's over there at the other end of the room setting up the disk ferret to read the 18-sector disks. Some of the demo copies and test copies and stuff are all done with the protection, but not still not heavily protected, but they can't be read by normal means. I think there's actually, I think something's right. So first things we did was go after some early games he did, and it was the Asteroids clone.
Death Bounce. Death Bounce.
Death Bounce, yeah. He hadn't seen in that many years. And then Roland Gustafson tuned in, and that was, the whole day went nuts from there. The IRC channel was lit up. It was just going crazy. Started making images, and then this was the moment of surprise when I called him over and said, here's the Prince of Persia source on the screen, and I think I could type it in anyway if I found it. That was what I loaded, but I loaded something he recognized, and he's got the, I haven't seen this in forever look, and then this is the disk ferret card, and you heard Jason talk about the little board that they added to it, the floppy drive. There's a kind of a more close-up picture of it there. This is it going. I'm kind of jumping back and forth here. The disc, actually, you know, if you're familiar with how CD-ROMs work, or audio CDs work, and how audio quality works, in general, you have 44K for audio CD quality, 16-bit 44K, then you have 32 steps down. A phone conversation is in your 2 to 4 to 8K range. 8K would be an excellent, clear phone conversation. Those old Sprint commercials where they drop the pin, be like an 8K connection. It doesn't sound like much, but it's, so you can see here we're talking about how fast the speed is, how fast the disk is spinning, and how much data is being read with each pass. Another thing that day, Jason Scott's blog had a entry on it about how Sears had a site with all these schematics and all these service parts available, and you could buy stuff. And I'm reading through it, and I'm kind of laughing. This is one. He's found all the schematics for Atari 400, the parts breakdown diagrams and everything else. But quickly he adds into the like the third paragraph, don't worry about this bullshit, you can't buy this stuff. But I'm going to talk about it anyway. And I read that, so I brought up an Atari 400 that was in a box, because I had one. So I walked in with it, and we had all this stuff set up. So it was kind of more of the day turned into be a fairly long day. As you can see, it's dark outside. We started early in the morning. It's about that time of year. It was getting dark at 7:30 in California. So we were there until about 10. I got home at 3 in the morning. And this was another thing. So after we got the disks, the floppy contents going, he had several sets of backup disks from the ProCell backup from the CIDR drives and whatnot that he had. And that was some of the questions they were asking me in IRC. They said, what does backup/backup 01 mean? And backup 02 and things like that. I said, it sounds like ProCell backup to me. So that was one of the reasons I brought the 2GS, and I brought a bunch of empty CF cards. So I'm sitting here. I had to remember where ProCell saved the volume size, because you couldn't restore to a larger. Obviously, you couldn't restore to a smaller, but you could not even restore to a larger volume. So if you backed up a 20 meg volume with ProCell backup, you couldn't restore to a 32. I think you could, but it wouldn't let you. It's a volume size mismatch. It had to be down to the block. So I've made a few bogus backups and volume sizes and whatnot, figured out where they were storing the block. And that's what I was writing down on here, the header and stuff information I was finding. So I went and changed the block size of the backup disks so I could restore it on a 32 meg volume. There's only 5 meg of data we were talking about, but I wanted to get it. So then I was able to restore. This is towards the end of the day. The place looks like a mess. And I was able to restore the 2 backups. And here's another interesting thing. they had the theory of making an off-site backup, which was after they ran a set of floppies with a rubber band around it, they sent it home with the other guy, and he took this and he put it home. Well, sometime over all those years, the two sets of backups ended back up in Jordan Mechner's box. Apparently someone gave it back to him after all those years ago, and they ended up in there. So he had two sets of backup. And this is an excellent example of why you like to have multiple if you can. Because the first one I restored was corrupted. The discs read fine. It was corrupted because the discs got corrupted. They still read wrongly. The one that wasn't his was a good backup. It was the same data. The dates were the same. He confirmed it, basically, but he remembered how they used to do it, and whatnot. So there you go. One set of disks was given to somebody else to take somewhere else. One set of disks stayed in his house. Like the hard drive stayed somewhere else, and that's how that worked. So how all this came to be is rather kind of interesting, because I do have to say the wheels in motion were probably put into motion on this, maybe as far as destiny that brought me to be involved in the Prince of Persia source code. I don't know, it's hard to say, but I would have to say KansasFest 2 years ago, 3 years ago, made it happen. And that connection probably didn't hit until very recent. And what basically I'll attribute it to, and I'll have to thank Ken, because without Ken doing it, it probably would have never happened. And I just caught you off guard, I'm sure.
Just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Because if Jason Scott hadn't come here, I don't think Jason Scott and I would have figured out who we were, and I don't think I would have gotten pegged by him to be the one, because I have the arsenal of hardware and can report to practically anywhere if I need to be. And I told him that. So if it was in New York, I'd have gotten on a plane. Luckily, it was in LA. But yeah, it was. It came together that way, and it's kind of cool because some people behind the scenes say, if anybody's going to get it off those discs, he's going to get it off those discs. And when I got that backup restored, that was the pinnacle of the whole thing. Never mind the floppies. He was all more concerned. He goes, we've got to do magnaflux. We've got to do flux dump on the floppies. Well, dude, it'll work. Trust me, it'll work. Got many years behind this. I take discs out of sleeves. So you've got an old disc that's got mold and junk in it. Take it out of the sleeve. I take it to warm water under the faucet with lemon fresh. What is it? Lemon fresh joy. I put it on my hands and I just do this with the disc in my hand under the water. When you know you're done, you know it's right. When you take it out of the warm water and go like that,
All the water comes off.
and the water comes off, it's dry. Set it on Bounty. Get a new floppy. Slice the back like a cleaning disc. Slide it in there. Put it in a disk drive. Read just like that. As long as you don't physically bend the crud out of them, they work well. They're very resilient, very tough, and even if they do have creases in them, we all got these nice crease fixers for floppy disks back into your fingernail on a paper towel. Just go backwards on it, and you can get the crease out. If you've got a double-sided disc, keep in mind, remember which side had the hub ring on it, because that's the side. And in case you never bothered to think about it, Apple II discs, any disc actually, side 1, yeah, I know, you put the disc in the drive like this. Side 1 is here. Side 2 is here. And if you turn it over, like we do, we flippy discs, side 1 is now down at the bottom again, because we flip them over. But the double-sided drive is reading like that. So that was the thing with the flippy disk mod, was to be able to read both sides with one pass. But a flippy disk does not have to have the sides synchronized, because it never reads them at the same time anyway. So that doesn't matter, but it makes it easier with one pass to read that. And of course, realizing you're reading it in the reverse direction. they take care of that. So anyway, that was that's pretty much how I looked at that and I said that's how it came to be, and I don't think it would have happened otherwise.
Granted, you had a mission. Was he ever overwhelmed by the army that came to help?
When he saw the pickup truck full of stuff, yeah, he said brought back all kinds of old times. But yeah, he was like, no, I think we got it. I think yeah, he was pleasantly surprised, and.
I didn't hear if you said earlier, did you get reimbursed for your work?
Reimbursement was knowing we did a job. The exposure I got off of it, the whole mission got off of it. The fact that other people, wait a minute, they were interested in that. Look at all they did for that. Things have popped up since. There's the payback. That was worth it. Otherwise, it was another obscure thing in the bottom of the hole. But no, that was so yes and no. It was worth it there. And what else did I have? I don't think. So a couple weeks later go by, and I get a phone call from Jordan Mechner again.
I've lost it again.
No, he wanted a 2E because they were doing the photo shoot for the new Karateka commercial. Hopefully, when that comes out, you'll see a color monitor 100. They wanted to be authentic, and that's another thing that I was happy to get the exposure for because I'm archivist-wise and period. You know, if you ask me for a 2E, and this leads into tomorrow's session. You ask me for a 2E, you want something from 1982 because you need something that's period, that's right. Someone's not going to go to a movie and look at it and say, "That's not that thing didn't come out for 10 years later." You're not going to get that from me. You ask me for 2E, you tell me it's got to be 1982. I give you down to the warranty card in the box. The one that belonged in there. You know, Forrest Gump was an amazing piece of work. They did an outstanding amount of research in periodizing that movie. I was wowed, darn near wowed, until the very end.
The stationary.
When he opened up the envelope from Apple Computer and it had the font from the Macintosh from 1986 on it instead of 1980, I go, what the heck is this? Guys just blew the whole thing. That won't happen with me. So anyway, that was it. They wanted a color monitor that would have been back then, so that somebody like me would not look at the screen at the video shoot and say. So they got 2 disc 2s and a color 100 monitor, and this 2E very similar to this. And tomorrow, this 2E looks to be deceiving because this one is a piece of work. But that's why it is, because it does exactly what I need it to do. Anything? Were we on back channel on this one?
No.
No, but any other questions?
Apart from the Prince of Persia source code, how about the other stuff? Is that, do you know sort of what the status of the stuff
Oh, yes, okay. Also, what was uncovered was the 18 sector stuff from Roland Gustafson. For several days after that, he was actually hanging out in A2C chat, and they were going over all this stuff, and the guys were going over, and he's sitting there, and this was the cool thing. It's the Cryoflux guys, this ferret, I keep calling, it's this ferret because these are the guys we were talking to. Cryoflux is on it. I don't know why Cryoflux is on my mind. I think it's a cooler name, and I can't stand the ferret name, but anyway. I understand the purpose behind it, but ferreting out information. But anyway, no, they're sitting there telling Roland how this stuff works. And he's like, yep, they've got this figured out. I didn't have to tell them anything, because between that and the source, so here you are 30 years later, something like that, you got the source code. And then Eric Shepard comes into the chat, it sees Roland Gustafson, big old long nickname on the thing. And first thing that Eric says, it's really kind of weird being in a chat room with the guys whose discs I pirated 30 years ago. But yeah, that was a bit of resurgence there, so that was kind of cool. And again, I think it's the KFest connection that brought it all back into our neighborhood, because while Jason was called in to do a mission, his attitude was, I'm going to get the right tools for the job.
I found that was really quite interesting watching Roland do this, because it didn't seem like he had really communicated this stuff with anybody.
No, and we purposely didn't tell anybody anything.
But
And even when I went up there and I was telling him, I said, it's 18th sector, it's spiraled, it's doing this. I knew what I was. And Jason, so I'm basically backing it up. Jason says, yeah, he knows what's going on. The disc ferret guys figured it out. And then the source code backed it up and confirmed it all. So now with the source code, the way they see the discs were written, it gives them a tremendous insight. Again, this is more payback, because now with the disc ferreting technology, it gives them tremendous insight to turn that magnetic dump back into a 2-image. In our case, a 2-image, or whatever other format for any other emulator. But it gives it tremendous, because now you can say, okay, this really means this, which means this, which means this. It's 18th sector. Let's see if we can do this in an image. But images don't support 18th sector, but you know what? Now you can make one that does. Anybody else?
Technical question on the disk ferret kind of recovery stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned how it's like a raw image. You're stepping the head through and you're just recording the magnetic fluctuations. So it doesn't know how many tracks a disk might have, right?
No.
Because it's not looking at that kind of logical thing. So how do they overlap or underlap as they're stepping the head through?
That is the deal here. Let me see if this shows it, because
you can see it on the picture.
yeah. What you can kind of see here, this actually isn't really showing it, but it is. Okay, we know the discs are 40 tracks per inch. So if you know something about it, like Elisa's 62.5, high density is 80 tracks per inch. So Twiggy floppy is 62.5 tracks per inch. The Apple II used 35 tracks. 360K, everybody uses, you always have your unformatted capacity and your formatted capacity. And I've never, stood that with marketing people. This is a 200 gig disk drive. But yeah, you only get 190. So it's 190, I don't care what you tell me. Whatever. 20-inch monitor, yeah, but you only got 19 visible. It's a 20-inch monitor. But I can't use the rest. So anyway, the thing with it is, you go into this knowing that you got a low density disk, it's going to be 40 tracks per inch. So maybe you set your optimal up at 40 tracks per inch. But what if the people use the hardware differently? And then that's what you're going to start analyzing your magnetic dump. That's why you have a choice with this step. So if this is 4 out of 40 tracks, you're going to step in different increments so that you're going to overlap. But you're going to find the sweet spot, because you're going to see the one that's got the most data, and you're going to get the same kind of waveform. So if you read,
Kind of difference between data and noise.
yeah, and it's all going to be magnetic. It's all going to be waveform anyway. But you'll still see. So if you read here, and you got a line down the middle, and you're reading this wide, that same line is going to be over to the side of this now center. So you're going to overlay all these things on top of each other. At some point, you'll decide we don't need this much resolution, these many steps. We can now say, step me every half inch, read me standard tracks, and be done with it. So you'll start at 0 and go step, 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 step. Give me 40 passes, 40 hits on the drive, and that's the lowest. How much power is it giving the head? How much is it trying to listen? So how much bleed are you going to get? And you turn it down, that's where you get down to 150 meg per 143K. Basically about a meg a K. And if the discs are really bad, then you want to turn that up. Kind of like they're listening in deep space and you're just waiting and waiting and waiting. The little speck, because you might hit it with this pass and that pass, but you won't hit it with the other pass. That's when the discs are really bad. So You gotta take what you can get.
So how many different passes did you do of the disc?
For the first 4 or 5 we did, again, it's only one. You basically do one pass. You say here. And this we say, okay, this is obviously reading well. We don't need this much data. Because the other thing is we had to upload them. We can't upload 600 meg on a residential connection very
So you
fast.
just did one pass and then reduced the amount of data you actually needed?
No, we did 6 or 7 disks full at 600 meg.
Okay.
Let them have them. They were happy with it. Said, now give us 300. Turn it down.
Might be the 16 tracks, decide that 8
Or
tracks
the-
is probably good enough, and then
Yeah.
finally decide, or.
In this case, it's it isn't the amount of tracks so much as the strength of the listening.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then so they just basically came across, we just said, the 150 meg passes are good. They only take 20 minutes, took 5 to 8 minutes instead of 20. So, now, this is granted, it's a 5 1/4 inch disc, 40 tracks worth of data. Take an 8-inch disc into consideration. Or as a magnitude of size, it's a lot bigger.
One thing I think is interesting about this particular picture is just that you can see the spiral. I mean, I
Yeah.
think this is a, we're looking at 2 quarter tracks there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can see it. And I think it was quarter spiraling, which means you got 4 tracks, so you're quarter off. And Electronic Arts was famous for trying to do 4+4 encoding and quarter track spiraling, but in a zigzag. You go in and out, in and out, in and out. So you'd actually overstep each other. Well, it's the same amount of data. You're not reading that stuff in order. You're going back over there to get it over here. It's kind of cool. That's where you heard their drive going tick, 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 tick. And you heard like going back and forth. And it was the very end before the game loaded. If that didn't pass, no game.
In the disk fair, once it gets the 150 meg image, can they write that back as a 2MG? Or
No, that's where this 18 sector source code is helping, because they haven't gotten to that point where they can return that to an image. They can barely see data in it now, but I think it's probably around the corner now to be able to write that back. That's the goal, is to put that back. Maybe not necessarily with the hardware, the ferreting hardware, but with software and a proper emulator in a proper environment can make an image, and the image gets written back out like you'd use Image Maker and Disk Maker. Image Maker makes the image, Disk Maker puts it back. So you'd use the equivalent of Disk Maker for that image format to put it back to media. And I'll leave you with a little bit of another little side tip, a side piece of data that those are haven't been in chat, quite familiar with. Thinking back to Apple DOS 2.3, 143K per disk, 207 catalog entries per floppy, I believe is what it was. 16 times 7, something like that. 7 entries per sector, 14 sectors per catalog, 15, 16, 17, 15 sectors per catalog. Anyway, those of you who don't know, DOS 3.3 directly supported 400K of storage. Unmodified. The floppy disk only held 140K. The VTOC has, think of a piece of graph paper. This sector is occupied, this was occupied, this was not, this was not, this was not. There's enough spots to keep track of 400K. 32 sectors, 80 tracks. 3.5-inch drive. 400K is 32 sectors, 256 byte sectors, 80 tracks. The DOS 3.3 mod to use the 400K drive was simply patching in the controller, and now you've enabled the hardware to use all that. A DOS 3.3 system I've been working on that uses DOS 3.3 hard drive based storage. The guy took an interesting approach, because he wanted to keep track of more data with less catalog tracking and less worrying about volumes. He stored volume, took 2 volumes and put them together, modified the RWTS, that if you went to sector 10 in hex, which is now 17, it knew to increment the volume number by 1. So track 1, sector 1, or 0, was really referred to as track 1, sector 17. This did two things. Less volumes to keep track of, and maintain copy A compatibility for backing up your drive. Because you could back up your drive on the normal floppies. Unlike the CIDR, that called their super volumes, where they actually allocated 400K's worth of space, used DOS 2.3 unmodified, but you couldn't back the dang thing up without copying the files out individually. And with that, the 400K drive in the Mac, the 800K drive in the Mac, and the original Twiggy drive specification, and the Apple III has a few extra pins on its 25-pin, 26-pin header. They're all electrically compatible with the Apple II. You could plug the 800K drives into a Disk 2 controller with some caveats, because one of them has a different layout for a ground return pin. But in theory, it's electrically compatible. The phase for the stepper motors, all that stuff's in the same place. They don't smoke. Tomorrow I will show you a bit more on that as to the back end of the floppy drive and where they were going with the Twiggy drive and the FileWare, and what didn't happen and why we have what we have today. So with that, if there's any other questions, otherwise it wraps it up.